All right, you've been in the home theater game for quite some time now, and you've decided you just need an upgrade, and you're looking at a 9-channel or more home theater receiver. There are plenty of options to choose from, so I hope this buying guide helps you in eliminating some of the ones you don't need or features that aren't just for you, and maybe this will help you zero in on that AVR that is just perfect for your situation in your living room, etc. Maybe your goal is to eventually build out to a 7.2.4 immersive audio configuration. I'm here to help give you some recommendations along the way. So I've already done 5-channel, 7-channel, but now let's get into the big leagues with 9-channel AVRs. All right, in this video, I'm definitely not going to go over every single one that's available, and I'm not going to go over every single feature on the list. I'm just going to go over the highlights, perhaps why you should get this brand over another brand. And speaking of brands, I'm going to go over one brand at a time, as opposed to starting from lowest price to highest price, just because there's so many to choose from. Okay, so let's hop online and get to it. Right off the bat, we're going to start with Sony. With 9-channel AVRs, they have the new AZ3000, 5000, and 7000 ES models. The main difference between the three that you might have seen already is that the 3000 supports 9 channels, the 5000 supports 11 channels, and the 7000 supports 13 channels, ranging from $16.99 to $32.99. Not only do they sequentially support more channels, but they also have more power. But don't forget, this is regarding 2 channels driven. The 3000 is rated at 110 watts per channel, the 5000 120 watts, and the 7000 140 watts. The 3000 in particular is in a class all of its own because you'll notice when I go into the specifications here and go into the pictures, there is not a full set of pre-outs. The only pre-outs you get are for these subwoofers. So if you're wanting to get into Dolby Atmos, if you're wanting to get a 5.2.4 configuration with 5 ear level speakers, 2 subwoofers, and 4 height channels powered by the internal amps only, the 3000 ES might be the one for you. If you don't care about pre-outs, if you don't care about eventually having external amps powering your speakers, you're cool with just having the AVR doing its job, having an all-in-one solution, the 3000 ES may be calling your name. Some similarities across the board with these Sony AVRs is that they all support Dolby Atmos, DTS:X, and IMAX Enhanced, and all 3 do not support RO3D, if that's a deal breaker for you. They all have Class AB internal amps. With Sony having their own PS5 gaming console, you can expect that they all have HDMI 2.1 and next-gen gaming features like 4K 120Hz support, variable refresh rate, auto low latency mode, etc. But as I alluded to before, let's go into the specifics of the 7000 ES. And as you can see, holy cow, it has a full set of pre-outs. So if you're planning on eventually having, or if you already have external amps to power your speakers, this accommodates that, being able to connect to your external amps via these RCA pre-out outputs. And since the 7000 ES in particular can support up to 13 channels of audio, that means you can have up to a 7.2.6 immersive audio configuration. But one caveat to that is that you have to power at least some of your speakers externally if you want a configuration that large. Or instead of a 7.2.6 configuration, you could also have front wides if you're into those. So you could have a 9.2.4 configuration, which still adds up to 13.2. One interesting thing about the 5000 ES is that it can support a 7.2.4 configuration without the aid of an external amp. Because a lot of times with this class of AVR, you'll notice maybe it'll support up to 9 channels using the internal amps, but in order to get 11 channels of processing going, you have to have an external amp to power at least 2 of those channels. But with the 5000 ES, you've got 11 speaker terminals. So you can power an entire 7.2.4 configuration with the AVR alone. But it is cool that you have the option of using external amps, maybe immediately or sometime down the road. So that is always a big plus in my opinion. For you music lovers out there though, just so you know, none of these have a phono input. So if you like to hook up your turntable so you can hear it through your system, you can do it through one of the analog inputs, but you'll have to have a phono preamp to go along with your turntable. There is not a phono preamp built in. All right, let's go over some Onkyo options. You've got the 7100, RZ50, and RZ70. Again, like the Sony AVRs, the 7100 is in a class all of its own because, just like the AZ3000ES, the Onkyo 7100 does not have a full set of pre-outs. The only pre-outs you have are for Zone 2 or your subwoofers. So if you're cool with just powering your speakers with the internal amps, you don't care about external amps, you want a 5.2.4 immersive audio configuration, and you don't want to spend all that much money, because right now, at least, depending on when you watch this video, it might not be true, but right now it's $899, which is an incredible deal for a 9-channel AVR. Honestly, any 9-channel AVR that's under $1,000, that's a really good deal, especially in 2023. All right, one thing you're gonna get with Onkyo AVRs compared to all the other choices you have out there is that they are one of the few that are THX certified select. So if THX certification is something that is important to you, you're probably gonna wanna go with Onkyo. Like the Sonys, this also supports Dolby Atmos, DTS:X, and IMAX Enhanced. But here's one thing that makes this one stand apart from all the rest of the AVRs out there that are 9-channel. This one has Direct Live room calibration software built into it already. It is not an extra expense like with Denon and Marantz. It is already there. And with this being on sale for $899, the fact that you can have Direct Live built in is a steal, my friends. And with any 9-channel AVR, because of the price point, because of the channels that it supports, I expect them to support HDMI 2.1 in 2023, which this does. It also supports HDCP 2.3, very future-proof when it comes to copyright protection laws that may go into effect in a few years. Supports all of the major HDR formats, supports ARC and eARC, supports all the next-gen gaming features, variable refresh rate, auto low latency mode, and this one in particular also does quick frame transport to reduce or eliminate lag and frame tearing. Unlike the Sony models we looked at, this one does have a moving magnet phono input for connecting a turntable. So even though Onkyo isn't widely known for its musicality, it is pretty cool to know that you can connect your turntable to it. All right, one of my other favorite AVRs on the market today is the Onkyo TX RZ50. It can support up to a 5.2.4 immersive audio configuration with just the internal amps alone, or it can support a 7.2.4 immersive audio configuration with the help of external amps. And unlike the 7100, the RZ50 has a full set of pre-outs. So if you happen to have or plan to have a collection of external amps to power all of your speakers externally, this can accommodate that. This is also THX certified. This also has Direct Live built into it, HDMI 2.1, next-gen gaming features, etc. And on Crutchfield.com, I constantly find this AVR on sale, including right now for $12.99. Normally it's $15.99, but for $12.99, with all those features, full set of pre-outs, it is by far one of the best values you can get today in 2023. I do have a video where I go over the differences between the RZ50 and RZ70. One big difference is that the RZ70 can support up to a 7.2.4 immersive audio configuration without the need of any external amps. As you can see here, it has a bunch of speaker terminals. So if you don't care about external amps and want to power all of your speakers with the internal amps exclusively, the RZ70 can accommodate that. And one big difference between the RZ50 and RZ70 is that the amps inside are much better. The weight of the RZ70 is much heavier than the RZ50. So that tells you that the capability of the amps is just on another level, right? But with those differences, is it worth like $1,500 more? that's debatable. But since it is the newer version, it is going to last you longer. It is a bit more future-proof. I honestly have had some comments of some people talking about certain glitches and software problems with the RZ50 in particular. So you do run the risk of those issues cropping up with the RZ50, but I still think it's one of the best values on the market today. But with all the capabilities and bells and whistles that the RZ70 has, I honestly wish it would be more like $2,000, $2,200 maybe. I think that would be a more reasonable price. All right, getting into Pioneer real quick. They have the LX305, that is their least expensive 9-channel AVR that they offer, for $11.99. Like the Onkyo 7100, this does not have a full set of pre-outs, so you have to rely on the internal amps only. And if you weren't aware of this already, Pioneer and Onkyo are under the same parent company. So they have the same graphic interface. They use a lot of the same internal components. One difference is the Pioneer does not have THX certification, but it does have direct live room correction built in. The other big difference between Onkyo and Pioneer is that Pioneer tends to lean a little bit more to music. So if you like Onkyo products, but you also listen to music a lot, you might want to get the Pioneer equivalent. So as I said, the LX305 is the equivalent to the Onkyo 7100. And for whatever reason, Crutchfield only sells the LX305. But there is also the LX505, this one having a full set of pre-outs. So with it being $13.99, it is a very good deal. I mean, it's basically the equivalent of the RZ50. And lastly, there's the LX805 for $2,999. And you can see it kind of looks pretty similar to the Onkyo RZ70. One difference you might be able to see here is that it has XLR pre-outs just for the front left and right channels. So if you have some real nice tower or bookshelf speakers for your front left and right that you like to listen to music a lot through, as well as a 2-channel external amp that accepts XLR connections, this might be the one you want to get instead of the RZ70. Again, because Pioneer kind of leans more towards movies and music. So that way with the XLR connections, you get the more balanced, cleaner audio signal while you're listening to 2-channel stereo music. This also supports up to 4 subwoofers. Although just FYI, they are not completely independent. There's subwoofer 1A and B and subwoofer 2A and B. So subwoofer 1 is independent of subwoofer 2, but you don't have 4 discrete subwoofer channels. Make sense? So yeah, if you've got the money to spend, you like to listen to music as much as you watch movies through your home theater system, maybe you've got a complete set of external amps to power all of your speakers, the LX805 might be the one for you. And lastly, again, under the same parent company, we have Integra AVRs, which are more geared towards home integration. If you've got cameras everywhere, if you've got whole home audio, where you like to be able to listen to music in every room all around the house, you like smart home integrations, Integra is probably what you want. Just the word Integra should clue you in that it is for integrating into your home. So we've got the DRX 3.4, 5.4, and 8.4, $1,500 all the way to $3,200. Okay, one obvious difference between the three is their power ratings. The 3.4 has a power rating of 100 watts per channel, 2 channels driven. The 5.4 has 120 watts, and the 8.4, 150 watts per channel. Another main difference between the three is the processing power. The 3.4 can handle up to a 5.2.4 immersive audio configuration with the internal amps alone, or it has a full set of pre-outs to be able to power all of your speakers externally. But even then, it can only handle a 5.2.4 configuration, even with external amps. Although the 5.4, which is also a 9.2 channel AVR, can process up to a 7.2.4 configuration. But it can only do 7.2.4 with the aid of an external amp. Whereas the 8.4 can handle up to a 7.4.4 immersive audio configuration, and you can get away with that using the internal amps alone. But obviously it does have a full set of pre-outs, so you can also power all of your speakers externally if you choose. Another difference between the three is that the 3.4 does not have THX certification, but the 5.4 and 8.4 do. But like Onkyo and Pioneer, all three of these AVRs have direct live room correction software built in already. And talking about immersive audio formats, obviously Dolby Atmos and DTS:X and IMAX Enhanced support. But across the board, talking about Onkyo, Pioneer, and Integra, the DRX 8.4 is the only one that supports RO3D. So if you're a big fan of RO3D upmixing, maybe the Integra DRX 8.4 is the one for you. Some other unique features about the 8.4 is this section right here. Not only does it have a full set of RCA pre-outs, but just like the Pioneer LX805, this can handle up to 4 subwoofers. Again, not 4 discrete independent subwoofer channels, but it also has not just front, left, and right XLR outputs, but center as well, and subwoofer 1 and 2 XLR outputs, if your subwoofers happen to accept XLR connections. Again, for a cleaner, more balanced audio signal. So honestly, I think this is one of the most unique AVRs on the market today because of its home integration features, the ability to support up to a 7.4.4 configuration, and the ability to have your front soundstage and 2 subwoofers powered externally via XLR connections. So if you have enough money to spend and you like all those features, man, I would highly recommend this one. All right, let's talk about Yamaha. Just a reminder, Yamaha tends to be good for both movies and music. Since Yamaha is very into the music space, making pianos, for example. So they are going to be like Pioneer, they're going to be like Marantz when it comes to being able to have a movie and TV show watching experience, as well as being able to listen to music through your system and easily cast music to compatible music cast devices, which Yamaha supports. So we have the RX A6A and the RX A8A, both rated at 150 watts per channel, 2 channels driven. One thing to note between the A6A and the A8A, they can both process up to a 7.2.4 immersive audio configuration with the help of external amps. The only difference is the A6A, you have to have at least 1 external amp to be able to process that many channels, whereas the A8A has enough internal amps to be able to have a 7.2.4 configuration without the need for any external amps. But obviously, if you have enough of them, you can power the entire system exclusively with external amps using all of these pre-outs. And because Yamaha leans towards movies and music, it is another AVR out there that has XLR pre-outs for your front, left, and right speakers. And as I was alluding to earlier, all Yamahas come with Music Cast, which wirelessly connects compatible Yamaha components together for seamless whole home audio. So if you have some compatible Yamaha components in other rooms in the house, you can easily connect to all those speakers from the AVR. So if you're cleaning the house and want to have music playing wherever you go, you can easily do that with Yamaha AVRs. Both of these Yamaha AVRs support HDMI 2.1 and have next-gen gaming features for you gamers out there. And in the case of the A8A, it has a total of 13 speaker terminals, but as you can see here, the receiver itself can power a maximum of 11 channels at once. So even though all those speaker terminals are there, it's still limited to 11. So I'd say you should be leaning towards Yamaha if you like to watch movies and TV and listen to music, and not just listen to your music in your home theater system, but all around the house, because Yamaha receivers make that very simple to set up. So if that is very appealing to you, you probably want to go with Yamaha. And this flagship receiver is currently on sale for $2,999. All right, Denon receivers. The newest Denons that came out in 2022 are, gosh, they're a year old now. Holy cow, time flies. They now support up to 4 subwoofers. They also support direct live room correction, but as an added expense for the license. But of course with Denons, they have Odyssey room correction software built in already. All 4 of these have a full set of pre-outs, so you can incorporate external amps with these AVRs. But if you're going to be using the internal amps, the 3800 is rated at 105 watts. The 4800 rated at 125 watts, the 6700 is rated at 140 watts, and the 8500 is rated at 150 watts. Across the board, these all have very similar features when it comes to software. They all have AirPlay 2, Chromecast, they support Dolby Atmos, DTS:X, IMAX Enhanced, and RO3D, including the least expensive 3800H. But beyond that, they all have HDMI 2.1, 8K 60, 4K 120 video support, next-gen gaming features. So really a lot of the differences between these four is going to be more hardware-based. You know, the more you spend, the more HDMI inputs you'll have, the more optical inputs you're going to have, the more zones that you can have. Although the 6700 and 8500 are already pretty old. I think they came out in 2020. So unlike the 3800 and 4800, the 6700 and 8500 only support up to 2 subwoofers. But as far as processing power is concerned, Denon always likes to give the option of being able to have a larger configuration if you want to implement external amps into the equation. The 3800 and 4800 are both 9.4 channel AVRs, but can process up to 11.4 with the help of external amps. So only using the internal amps with the 3800 and 4800, you can have up to a 5.4.4 immersive audio configuration. But with the help of external amps, you can have up to a 7.4.4 immersive audio configuration. The 6700 being an 11.2 channel AVR means you can have up to a 7.2.4 immersive audio configuration using the internal amps exclusively, but with the help of external amps, you can have up to a 13.2 channel configuration. And the 6700 also supports front wides. So you can have up to a 9.2.4 configuration or 7.2.6 configuration. Although, speaking of, that's one cool thing about the new 3800 and 4800 is that they can support up to 6 height channels, which is really unique with AVRs on the market today. So with the help of an external amp, you could technically have a 5.4.6 configuration with the 3800 and 4800. Not exactly sure why you would want to do that, but it is an option. And then with the 8500, again, you can support up to 13.2 channels using the internal amps alone, but with the help of external amps, you can support up to 15.2 channels of audio, meaning it can handle up to a 9.2.6 immersive audio configuration. But obviously it's going to cost you $4,599. Woo! And unless you need 4 subwoofers, right now I would honestly go with the 6700H over the 4800H. Because right now, with the outlet savings you can see here in red, they're pretty much the same price. And the 4800H does not support front wides. So I think the 6700H at $2,507 is a better deal. But Denon has one more AVR up their sleeve, and that is this behemoth, the AVR A1H, a 15.4 channel AVR. Woo! Just look at all those speaker terminals. And if you have 4 subwoofers that all support XLR connections, this has XLR pre-outs for those subwoofers. And being able to support up to 17.4 channels means you can have some crazy configurations. I mean, just take a look at this diagram here. Obviously, it can't support all of these listed here, but it can support up to 17 of these speakers in various configurations. So honestly, if you had 9 ear level speakers and 6 height channels, that's 15 right there. So with the extra 2 that you can have, yeah, I would probably have this CH which would be center height, but then you can also have this surround back that's directly behind you. Not surround back left, surround back right, but actually surround back center, I guess you could call it. Or if you like RO3D, maybe you'll have a surround back directly behind you, but then also a voice of God directly overhead. So yeah, the A1H is large and in charge, but obviously it's very expensive. $64.99. Whoa. All right, let's talk about Marantz. The older models are the ones that begin with SR, such as the SR7015 and SR8015. But just so you know, the SR6015 still exists. It's still out there. Crutchfield just doesn't carry it anymore, but Amazon does. And it is also a 9-channel AVR for only $14.99. But one of the differences between the 6015 and the 7015 is that the 6015 does not support RO3D. They kept that exclusively to the 7015 and higher for whatever reason. All 4 of these are HDMI 2.1 compatible, but a big difference between the older models and the newer models is that the 7015 and 8015 only have one HDMI input that is 4K 120Hz compatible for next-gen gaming, which also means it only has one HDMI input that supports 8K 60 if and when 8K sources becomes a thing in the next few years. But as you can see, the Cinema 50 and Cinema 40 have 6 HDMI inputs that support 4K 120 or 8K 60. So definitely much more future-proof. But between Denon and Marantz, which are owned by the same parent company, typically you're going to want to go with Marantz if you like music more. It has a better built-in DAC for music reproduction, as well as a couple more features that cater towards music listening. And just like the newer Denon models, the 3800 and 4800H, the Cinema 50 and Cinema 40 can have Direct Live if you buy the license at an additional cost. The differences between the Cinema 50 and Cinema 40 are mostly kind of hardware based. I mean, the Cinema 40 does have a little bit more power when using the internal amps rated at 125 watts, whereas the Cinema 50 is rated at 110 watts. But in my case, since I prefer to use external amps to power my speakers, that number doesn't really pertain to me. But the Cinema 40 can also support up to 3 zones, where the Cinema 50 supports up to 2 zones. Again, that's not important to me. I don't really do zones. 7 HDMI inputs versus 6. I don't have that many components to connect to it. 1 component video input as opposed to none, which also doesn't pertain to me because component video inputs are legacy inputs that I just don't need because they're pretty much obsolete at this point. So between the two, if you already have or plan to get external amps, you might as well just save some money and get the Cinema 50. All right, let's talk about Arcam. You might be thinking to yourself, wait a second, this says it's a 7.2 channel home theater receiver. Yes, technically, but there's a reason I didn't include those in my 7-channel AVR buying guide. Because A, they're just so expensive, and B, it's because they only have 7 internal amps. But for example, the AVR 11, which I did talk about in the 7-channel AVR buying guide, they can support up to a 7.2.4 immersive audio configuration, whereas the AVR 21 and 31 can handle up to a 9.2.6 immersive audio configuration. And honestly, I was looking at the specs between these two and they are virtually identical. The biggest difference that I could find is that the AVR 31 has a little bit more power, 120 watts versus 110 watts, but also that power is coming from a Class AB amp in the AVR 21 and a Class G amp in the AVR 31. Class G is even more efficient and it just costs more to have a Class G amp in anything. So is it worth paying like around $2,000 more for the AVR 31? That's debatable, but I'm gonna say no. But considering it can support up to a 9.2.6 configuration, compared to other AVRs out there that can handle that large of a system, $3,760 is kind of in the ballpark. Would it be worth the regular price of $4,700? But honestly, that's all I'm going to say about Arcam, because if you're willing to spend that much money, it's probably because you are an Arcam fan already. And lastly, in the category of hybrid AVR/preamp processors, there is the Anthem MRX 1148K. As we can see on the back, it can handle up to a 7.2.4 immersive audio configuration using the internal amps alone. But with this huge pre-out section over here, it can handle up to a 9.2.6 configuration. with the help of external amps. Again, anyone who is willing to spend $4,199 on an AVR is probably someone who is already a fan of Anthem, who enjoys the Anthem sound, and who enjoys their proprietary Arc Genesis room correction software, who also wants to spend that much money on their audiophile grade 32-bit 768 kilohertz DAC, especially if you're going to be listening to music. You might like their toroidal power supply, but personally, I can't really speak too much to the Anthem sound because I have never actually had an Anthem AVR or preamp processor in my theater. So please comment below if you are just a diehard Anthem fan so you can tell me what it is about Anthem products that make them so unique and worth the price. All right, so now that we've gone over all those options, the best budget-friendly 9-channel AVR is going to be the TX-NR7100 from Onkyo. Especially with it being on sale for $899, that is a killer deal, considering it supports up to a 5.2.4 immersive audio configuration, supports Dolby Atmos, DTS:X, IMAX Enhanced, it's THX certified, comes with direct live room correction built in, HDMI 2.1, next-gen gaming features, moving magnet phono input for connecting a turntable, so it caters to both movie and music lovers. So yeah, incredible deal if you can find it on sale like it is now. Beyond that, I still highly recommend the Onkyo TX-RZ50, again because it supports all the things that the 7100 supports, but also a full set of preouts so you can incorporate external amps either right away or down the road if you so choose. Next, I would recommend the Denon X3800H because it also has a full set of preouts for external amp usage, up to 4 subwoofers, support for 6 height channels if that's something you care about, RO3D, and a direct live license if you want to pay the extra money for it. I would say the Sony AZ3000ES is a very close second to the Denon X3800H because, as you can see, they are the same exact price, but the 3000ES does not have a full set of preouts. But Sony's own proprietary room correction software in tandem with 360 spatial sound mapping is an incredible immersive experience. Next, I would recommend the Cinema 50 from Marantz, again because it supports up to 4 subwoofers. You can get direct live room correction software if you want to pay the extra money for it. It's good for both movies and music, along with all the major modern features that you expect, with a very close second being the X6700H from Denon, considering with this outlet savings price being pretty much the same as the Cinema 50. But the 6700H is a little bit older. It only supports up to 2 subwoofers if that's a deal breaker. One big difference is that the 6700H supports up to 13 channels with the help of an external amp, whereas the Cinema 50 can only do up to 11 channels, plus your subwoofers, of course. Beyond that, if your budget allows for it, I would recommend the Sony AZ7015ES. It is a monster of an AVR. Again, Sony's room correction plus 360 spatial sound mapping is an incredible duo. Full set of preouts, supports up to 13 channels plus 2 subwoofers. It supports Sony's wireless surround speakers and subwoofers, if you want to incorporate those into your system, if you want to worry about just a little bit less speaker wire to deal with. But within that same price point, I would also recommend the DRX 8.4 from Integra, since it supports Dolby Atmos, DTS:X, IMAX Enhanced, and RO3D, THX certified, and Direct Live built in. But also because you can have your entire front soundstage connected to XLR external amps and connect to your subwoofers via XLR if your subwoofers support that. But this also supports up to 4 subwoofers, whereas the Sony 7000ES supports up to 2 subwoofers. So both of these AVRs are incredible on their own with their own unique set of features. And lastly, if you've got a lot of money to spend, there are the Arcam and Anthem AVRs, with their own unique hybrid components, having some internal amps, but then being able to expand to a much larger configuration with the help of external amps, being an AVR/preamp processor all in one, yada, yada, yada. Wow. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Like with my 7-channel AVR buying guide, I hope this kind of eases the tension. I hope it helped a little in deciding kind of which brand you might want to go with or which features are more appealing to you. Knowledge is power, and I hope this helped equip you with some tools necessary to make better decisions going into this holiday shopping season that's about to begin. So, good luck out there. You can do it, because we all deserve to have an incredible audio experience when watching TVs and movies and listening to music at home. So with that being said, as always, please be kind to each other out there. Don't just watch TV and movies, experience them with an incredible 9-channel AVR. And of course, always be listening.